Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone who's joining us live today, as well as everyone watching the recorded instance. This is the second workshop in a series of webinar workshops we have recently kicked off. So keep an eye on your email for the next one. And as well, there's a link to the previous one in your emails as well. So my name is Tamina Zahiri, and joining me today is Stephen Price, a familiar face to many of you, I'm sure. And our goal today is to enable your workspace creators, admins, and all the small teams who need to do it all themselves and give you the jumpstart you'll need to getting the most value out of our platform as soon as possible. This includes setting up a proper Git integration, branding your workspace effectively and efficiently to match your team's current brand, and ensuring that the right people can access all of your projects that you have set up in your workspace. So please make sure that your microphones are on mute and submit your questions via the Q&A function available to you, and we'll get to those at the end if we have time. And if not, we will follow up to those via email. And any other follow-ups, please feel free to just post those questions and we will get to you. So Stefan, I'm going to go ahead and let you take it away.
Thank you very much. And like Tamina just said, I'd like to welcome everybody. Thank you for attending this webinar. You may have attended the first webinar we gave a few weeks ago that was more of a one-on-one type of educational session. What I have here for you today focuses more on the point of view, the responsibilities of a workspace administrator, a workspace admin. Now, in case a few of you are very new to the platform, what I'll do is start on our website. So this is the Stoplight.io website, and I'd like to point out that if for any reason you feel that you need more information, just get a little bit more of an understanding of what we can do for you, you can look at our features tab here on the left. It'll describe the kind of features that I'll be talking about today. You'll also be able to find pricing information. And I really like that we provide a lot of learning resources. So if you or anybody on your team could benefit from understanding API design or mocking or any of these topics that you're seeing here, there's a lot of great content. A lot of experts have put great content for you to learn from. And likewise, with our open source products, you'll be able to find more information right here. So this is our website. If you do not yet have a Stoplight workspace, you can get started for free. So click on this button and you'll be able to create a new workspace from scratch. You'll be able to get a lot of value from it for free. So definitely do so if you haven't already. All right, so what I'm going to do is show you my workspace. This is a workspace that I've been maintaining for a while now. I really enjoy it. So I'm an admin. I've done the kind of things that I will be talking to you, describing today. And I've named it the API Guild. So it's the API Guild workspace. You'll see that I have a few options right here, and these are basically login options that I have enabled. Basically, I'm using 3 different Git providers on that workspace. Just by the nature of my job, at Stoplight, we would frequently use GitHub, but I also have some projects on Bitbucket and GitLab, so I've tested all of them. I've also set up SAML integration, and I can log in with my SAML account. So anyways, I'll log in with my GitHub account, and all of these accounts, by the way, have been connected to my Stoplight user. So you'll be able to find your user right here at the bottom. I'm called the architect. So this is my user, and you'll find all of the connected accounts here on this tab, and it's showing that I have integrated with SAML and all of these different Git providers. Now, I like to start talking about using a workspace right here, just because there's a lot of value behind these Git integrations that we're providing for you. It's not just a way to log in. It can actually drive the way you will be using this workspace and the way you'll be designing APIs. So if you have not yet integrated your account with any of these Git providers, you can come to this tab on your settings for your user and click on Connect. And basically what it does, it says, this is your Stoplight user and this is your email. Let's look for that email in GitHub and see if there's a user and what kind of repos can you work with. So that's what will allow you to do so. And if you wish to skip this step, you can just log in with a Git account right from the get-go. That should get it all working for you. Now, I think this is important for a admin to know. This is a tip for any user, but for an admin especially, because if you look at this button right here that will let you add projects, it will actually let you use the integrations that you see in this example. So all these integrations we provide out of the box, by the way. You won't have to set them up yourself. If they're Bitbucket Cloud or GitHub in the public cloud as well, they're all ready to use. We just need to know who you are. But the rest of the users at your company or organization should also want to use Git, and then have the ease of use of finding their orgs, their personal accounts. Lastly, finding the repositories that they wish to add to the workspace, and well, then they can add that repo and edit it directly in Studio. And if you don't know what Studio is, it's one of the most defining aspects of a Stoplight workspace. It will allow you to write open API. It's very, very neat, by the way. And lastly, we have these webhooks, right? So these webhooks will keep your docs up to date. You will not have to set up any of this automation yourself. It really saves a lot of time. Somebody can go into GitHub, check it, add a new repo into Stoplight, and we will handle all of that, all of those tasks of keeping that documentation up to date for you. So a lot of ease of use from that experience, and people that use the workspace can then edit the project in Studio Web. So if you're using this Git integration, it really adds a lot to the experience. Having said that, it's not the only option. Sometimes different projects might be organized differently, and especially so if you are exporting the open API through an annotations framework from your code base. You might place that open API file in a repository and use the Git integration just fine, but maybe you'd like to leverage a CI pipeline. So we have the Stoplight CLI as an option. You can add this to the pipeline, and what it will do is it will push those files, that documentation, into a project on your workspace. There's a little bit of extra work to do. You'll have to run those that pipeline as often as you think is necessary to update those docs, but that is also an option. You can use the Stoplight CLI and add it to your CI pipeline. So a bit of implications when we're talking about Git integrations. And in order for you to be an effective admin, you want to be comfortable with these settings. So if you click on this top button, top left button right here with the drop down, it will give you a list of settings. So let's have a look at the integrations tab. This lists all of the integrations that I have installed on my workspace, and even a few others that I haven't used yet. These are on-premise source control, by the way. So Azure DevOps Server, Bitbucket Server, both of these are on-premise. And I've had experiences with users of Stoplight that actually have GitHub Enterprise that's also hosted on-premise. And the way this configuration works is, if that is the case for you, you'd click on Configure. We have the default configuration, but then you can customize that integration right here and provide your own URLs. So let me actually add this as an example. Well, these are pretty simple. All they need is a URL. So a bit simpler than GitHub Enterprise, but you get the idea. So you will be able to configure any of these methods of authenticating and also the type of version control people will be using. There's a few settings that I'd like to point out. So we have these enabled sign in, sign up options. And these will influence how that login page will present itself, what kind of options users will have. And for example, if I turned off email altogether and save that choice, and then go back to the login screen, I don't have the option of logging in with email any longer. I'll just be able to use SAML or my Git account. So if you wanted to influence the kind of options that are available for your users, I definitely think that's a good idea. If you're not using a few of these integrations, you might as well not enable them. So let me just put that back in there. And there we go. So second topic that we've covered is configuring integrations and configuring that login experience. This is where you will be able to do so. And you might have questions since we're on this topic. Quite honestly, any kind of SAML integration can be a bit of a challenge. You might need some extra documentation to help you along. So if you need any extra help, just remember that you can click on your Stoplight user. It will display a menu that will take you to the settings I showed earlier, but then it'll also give you the option of looking at the product documentation. So this talks about different topics concerning the platform. It's useful for admins and any users that maybe want to understand publishing a bit better, but it also has information that will help you understand different Git integrations and single sign-on. So you'll be able to find the documentation real easy right within the product. Likewise, if you need any assistance, don't be shy. You can send us a message. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. So make sure to say hi. If you have any questions, we can help you out. And lastly, there's this roadmap tab. I think it's really useful as well. So if you're curious about what we're planning to do and what our vision looks like, you'll be able to find this information right here. Maybe you have a good idea. We certainly welcome this feedback, so you can submit an idea and our product team will be able to understand your thoughts. So definitely reach out to us in whatever way would be most helpful for you. So that covers integrations and authentication. I'd like to next talk about customizing the workspace. So you might have noticed already that this navigation on the left-hand side is a bit different from what you get by default. And likewise, I have an image right here that I've provided myself. So let's first talk about this landing page. I don't know if you knew, but you can configure your landing page. You can basically provide your own markdown. That's how it's written. It's written in markdown, and bring in your logos, your own images. I created this logo myself. This organization doesn't really exist, even though it looks like it. And the rest of the text is also something that I rewrote. So we provide a default landing page, and some of those different pieces I found were very helpful, even if I was creating my own landing page. So there was this login information with useful links. You'll notice here at the bottom it says apiguild.stoplight.io/auth. If you click on here to log in and invite team members, so it'll open those options for any user. The idea is, okay, so maybe your workspace only has an internal use case, so you can modify that experience for your internal users. Or in other situations, maybe it's shared. Maybe you're sharing documentation with internal and external stakeholders. Then this landing page can reflect that and be useful for both of those, both parties. So what I did after that is describe what you can do on a workspace, discovery with some GIFs, design. So there's studio right here. And documentation, this is an example project with some docs, code samples, and yeah, so contact information. Now, if you are inclined towards design and enjoy it like I do, I always find that some of these resources that we've placed right here at the bottom are great. They're very useful. So let me just mention them briefly. Unsplash.com is a great source of images that are free and high quality. You just need to give them credit, but you'll be able to find fantastic images to help you create a nice looking workspace. So if you don't have any of these stock photos, Unsplash is a great place to get them. Emojis, if you feel like you want to use them, I use them. That little what's the name for this? Well, these little icons right here, these are actually emojis. So there's a lot of places where you can just copy paste them, logo makers and stuff like that. But colors is a topic that I think is very important, very impactful in any kind of design experience. So there's a lot of resources out there as well for color palettes. And I use this frequently when I talk to Stoplight customers and they're wanting to make their workspace look like their web page. I can come in here and maybe look at interesting color combinations if their web page isn't very helpful. Like, it might give me an idea of what it will look like, but then I'll find other colors that will help me color these buttons and the highlight text. So once you do have a color palette that you like, you can come to this theming section and place these colors in here. So we have a background that will provide a background for this navigation, and it will persist into the documentation. The text color, so ideally you'll have a good contrast so it's easy to read, right? So if it's a dark background, you'd want light text or vice versa. The primary color will be used to highlight on hover. So this is similar to when you're hovering on a button, it will tell you where you're at. The accent color is used for places like this button right here. And if I were to change that experience into a preset, maybe the Swiss experience right here, you'll see that I have different primary colors. And if I go to the documentation, the highlighting, this is the behavior you'll get with the highlighting. So when it comes to theming, by the way, this is a preview. If you would like to go back to where you were at before you started that experiment, just click on reset and we're back right there. We just provided some easy presets for you to get started. And I don't know if you notice, but, and I'll go into this topic real soon too, when I change back into Swiss, I actually have colors for each one of my projects. So I'll talk about customizing the visual experience of your projects as well. Let me just go back to my nice preset. I really like this green and pink on a black background. Anyways, there's other settings for customizing your workspace. The landing page that I described earlier is here under the home screen, markdown content. So you'll be able to place or write markdown right here. Now, you can write markdown on this space, but what I did is use Studio. So this is the Studio app. If you haven't seen it yet, it will let you clone a repository or create a new project. So I have a repository called landing page. This is where I was storing my work. And the idea is this project contains all the assets I need, images. I'm actually embedding them through a URL. So I'm hosting them on a public GitHub repo. I can just grab that raw URL and link them in that way. But very useful because it will help me write the markdown, and then I can copy paste this content, place it on the workspace, and you'll get a nice looking result. So it's another tip if you want to write a nice looking landing page. I think Studio is a great way to do so. And then all of this work will be stored in a repository that you can then modify over time. So that's the way I did it. And the other options I was just about to describe, well, what they will allow you to do is have a display name, the API guild, and provide a logo. So I'm also hosting that logo like I did. It has a transparent background. So that's what you see right here. You also will have the ability to remove branding. So if you click on this toggle and save, it'll remove the Stoplight logo from the bottom. We definitely appreciate the extra advertising if you don't mind, but if you do mind, you can remove the branding. Custom domains is another way to customize your workspace. You'll be you can basically have the option of saying, this is called API guild.stoplight.io, but I'd just rather call it API guild.io. So you can do so, and the setup instructions are provided down here. Now, usually you might want to work with your company's IT department to be able to get this done, but it's very useful. It will also be useful for other reasons. So maybe you have APIs on your internal network, and if you're sending requests to that API, there's a little thing called cores that sometimes um, weren't considered when you set up a workspace in order for people to interact with, I mean, when you set up an API and for people to interact with those APIs. Well, if you place your custom domain on your network, then you won't have that cores problem. That's one way to solve it for all of your APIs. And that should covers the customization that you can do on the workspace. If I go to any of these projects, so this is one of the projects that I have here, documentation. We have Markdown and APIs. There's also options at the project level that you can look at, such as a display name. So consider providing a nice looking display name with a slug. Ideally, well, first of all, what is a slug? It's this URL component right here. So the shorter and easier it is to remember, the better it will be for anybody that might need it at some point. And descriptions, nice to let people know what you'll be doing. And it says 2 to 4 words best. I kind of broke the rules, but it's fine. And lastly, we have these icons. So this is another source of great icons that I really like. It's called Font Awesome. You might notice I'm quite interested in design and making beautiful web experiences. I think that's a very interesting area. So Fonts Awesome will provide icons that you can use for free. If I needed a unicorn, I guess that one is on Pro, but maybe I would want a peace sign. That's a nice symbol. So I can use a peace sign called Angel List. Did I miswrite it? Okay, well, we have one icon right there. So grab these for free now, and the colors. So the reason I bring in these icons is because we support them in the documentation as well. If for whatever reason you wanted to use icons in your Markdown, we already have native support in our docs. So that's something you can do, and that's what I did with this icon here. And this is actually also Fonts Awesome, this spinner. So it's got interesting components like that. And lastly, color. So if you're displaying color for your projects, you can choose colors right here. Use this color picker. I find that I really like using something like a color palette to find colors that are look really well. I'm kind of a pastel type of person, so I use a lot of pastels on my projects. So that way you can get colors. Now, all of that has been really design focused and around the aesthetics. So maybe that isn't what you're mostly concerned about. So this topic is very functional, and that's around branch management and versioning. What this describes is if you come to this project as a user, and let me just do that real quick. I can access this workspace anonymously as a internet user. And a few of these projects are public to the wider internet, right? So anybody that can find this URL can then consume this documentation. And you'll notice that I have a drop down allowing me to look at different versions. So we have V1, V2, V3 of this API project. So it's actually versioning not only the API file, but also the markdown that goes along with it, the models. The idea is that this is looked at holistically. So if you're versioning docs, it needs to include everything else in the project, including the articles. Now, how do we get this result? I'll log in now with a user that has the ability to edit a project. So I can see this Edit in Studio button and look at the settings. This branch management feature will let me track branches from a Git repository or if you're using the CI pipeline, you can also push branches and name them into a project. So we have developed. Now, this is just a demonstration, by the way. It's anyways, it doesn't have to be developed. It can be any other feature branch, but it has a nicer looking name right here that you can provide. So users will know this is V2 of that API, and it's published. So Docs consumers will be able to see it. We have an unpublished branch, which is this one. This is so you can have a review process. If you're collaborating on design and API docs, you'll review them in source control ideally, and you might have your organization might have your own processes for that. So since you own your own repos, you can definitely do so. Follow your own processes, but you can include a step that comes into a project and looks at an unpublished branch, and it has the reviewer make sure that this looks nice, that it's quality work, and it's ready to be exposed to different stakeholders. So once it's ready, you can click on publish, and you'll be able to see that branch as a docs consumer. So this is branch management, very useful. We do have a default branch. This is basically what will open up first. When anybody opens a project, this is the branch that they will see first, which I've placed as V1. Yeah, so useful settings right there, allowing you to version your documentation. Now, now that we're on this subject of these settings on the project level, managed access is also very important. I described earlier that this project is public, so it's visible to anyone on the internet, and that was my intention. When you first add a project into a workspace, however, it will be set as private. And the reason is so that different users on your workspace can feel free to just create a project real quick, and maybe they are just brainstorming. But since it's private, it won't be exposed to anybody else, to any other stakeholders. So they'll be able to collaborate with others. They can add a member to this project explicitly, for example, any of my friends. And then that way we can edit the project and talk about it. Once it's ready to be promoted to a state where it can be shared with a wider audience, like an internal audience, then we can do so. Now, this setting, however, is something that only admins can do. This is your choice. This is something that admins and owners can do exclusively. And the reason why it's been designed that way is so that an admin of a workspace is understood as a person that is in charge of curating it, of making sure that it serves its purpose and it's displaying the kind of projects that you want to display. So if you left that open to any user, they might make a mistake. An admin, however, can definitely decide this private project seems to be ready and good to go, so let's go ahead and make it public. And there's control that you have over that process. So visibility settings. Now, when I'm saying internal, you might wonder, well, how do we know who is an internal member of our organization? And it comes down to the role. So I'll show you what that looks like on this other settings tab called members, managing your users. There's a permissions legend right here where you have a certain kind of user from viewer and above that can view internal projects. So anybody who's a viewer or above is considered a internal user, somebody that's in your organization. We have this additional user called guests that is a great use case for third parties. So partners that have signed an NDA and they only need access to a subset of docs. That's a good use case for guests. So any admin needs to understand these roles. The difference between viewer and maker is that maker can add projects and use Studio, so they can actually add content to the workspace. Viewers can only consume documentation. All right, so management of your users, you can send invites or whitelist your email domain. It makes it a lot easier. And anybody who logs in with a company email will be a viewer, for example, or a maker. So you can define that behavior. Maybe whitelist the email domain for one of your partners, and then those people are guests. So you'll have that um, easier experience when it comes to onboarding. Now, I think we might have some other topics that I'd like to cover with you from an admin point of view, and it's all these settings that you see right here. So we have a list of projects. If the list of projects grows, this becomes useful because then you can search for them and understand what they contain. I have a pretty large project right here in this example. There's 1,000 different schemas and 12 different APIs and 1,000 endpoints on this project right here. And the one that I always like to show, Cloud Home, was a bit smaller, but made it look really nice. So projects, this is where you'll be able to manage your projects. Automation, what it describes is the webhooks. So all of the work that your webhooks will be doing. And I think I removed Cloud Home and added it later. So it's showing I've deleted it. Here's a webhook actually updating documentation. So it's logs for those webhooks. It's always nice to have if you have anything that's automated to just to know what's going on. This automation information can also be found on the project level, so specific to any one of your projects. Finally, billing. If you would like to upgrade your workspace to a plan that for different reasons, maybe you need a pro license or something like that, you can access this billing information right here and do it yourself. You can also delegate certain responsibilities. So we have a billing user, somebody that can exclusively, they can be an admin as well, but you might have somebody that exclusively just comes in here and works with any of those billing settings. So you'll have that type of user as well.